name of it.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. And a big thank you to Montgomery Summit and to Jamie for having us here. This panel is Innovation Across America. And I am joined by Jase Wilson from Neighborly.
Wait, across America? This is innovation around the world.
We're just restricting it to the good old U.S. and
You can't do
Tim,
that.
If you want to talk about
this is so wrong.
Okay, moving on with introductions.
You know that
this
American dream?
Draper.
What we're trying to do with that American dream we're all talking about, I am trying to export it.
Okay, well, thank you.
Sarah, good luck with this guy. That's all I got to tell you. So have fun.
And instead, Chris Olson can no longer join us. So thank you so much for graciously joining us from Ernst & Young.
You bet.
So yeah, I'll let each panelist just quickly introduce themselves. So Jase, why don't you take it from here?
Oh, thank you, Sarah, and thank you all for making time. And we hope to at least be entertaining. My name is Jase. I'm with Neighborly. Neighborly connects communities with capital for vital public projects like schools and libraries and parks and the roads and bike lanes connecting those things. And increasingly, we become obsessed with the next generation of information infrastructure that communities can and should develop and offer to make sure they can secure their own access to information and take true advantage of fiber-dependent technologies like 5G. So we are a marketplace for investing in world-positive community projects, and we try to find superior returns for investors through better outcomes for the world.
Okay, great.
Right, it's like a hackathon platform for great. Isn't that what hackathons start that way, right?
Well, it's a
what
technology
are the big
platform
problems
for financing the results of a hackathon.
Yeah.
Let's call it. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
So, Tim, you're known for so many things. I'm curious to hear how you'd introduce
Bitcoin.
yourself.
That's funny.
Bitcoin
I'm
10,000.
Tim Draper with Draper Associates. I've been investing in I've been a venture capital investor for 33 years. Had 34 unicorns, by the way.
Whoa.
And then have started a school just 6 years ago called Draper University of Heroes, and all sorts of unusual things have happened out of that school. We've had about 1,000 students, and they've come out of 74 different countries, and then they've gone back. Many of them have gone back. Some stayed in the Silicon Valley, and started 350 companies, and then they're kind of now my scouts for new deal flow. So it's I guess that's what I do.
Fantastic.
And then I tried to make California 3 parts.
6.
I was
Well,
going to
6
guess
first.
Right,
Yeah.
down to 3, and yeah. And
Yeah,
Rob?
that didn't work out.
Well, there's still time.
But yeah, no,
Remains
apparently
to be seen.
the Supreme Court of California somehow just yanked it off. You guys don't get to vote on that. Didn't that piss you off? We're America. We're trying to export how
Tim, all
free
you
we
need
are.
is a constitutional amendment to the United States Constitution, and then you can try it again.
No, that wasn't
No?
it. No, they said it might have a constitutional issue, but it got through the Secretary of State's office.
Are you
Attorney
announcing your
General.
presidency right here?
No.
Yeah, that would scare a lot of people right there.
We'd like it here.
And
though.
then, so with somehow, I don't know who influenced them, but just as the initiative, after it had gotten all the signatures, actually twice as many signatures that it needed, and the polling had gone from 8% to 27%, with 35% undecided. I think the powers that be panicked, and they yanked it off the ballot. They said it could be disruptive to California. That was
Well,
the whole
that's the
point.
Right, exactly.
Anyway,
So,
that
Rob,
I do other
speaking of
things.
disruption, how can you tell us a little bit about your background?
All right, I will do it this way. So I've been a CPA for 32 years, which doesn't sound as interesting as being a VC for 33 years. So, but I'm with Ernst & Young.
It's
and
only a year difference.
Yeah, it's the letters that was the difference. But in any case, my focus with Ernst & Young is working with entrepreneurs. That's been my background. And I think, as I was talking to Sarah earlier, the claim to fame that I'll make is I've lived and worked in Silicon Valley, which included some time down here in Silicon Beach. I live now in New York, so I'm in Silicon Alley. and I was a managing partner for Ernst & Young in Silicon Slopes, which wasn't on our list, in Utah for about 10 years. So, and Tim and I actually crossed paths while I was working with entrepreneurs in Utah. So that's a little bit about my
A lot of silicon.
A lot of silicon.
So a lot
right.
of, someone was telling me about Silicon Bog earlier today in
What?
Scotland. I know. Anyway, so a lot of people.
Scotland with
We lost
Nessie.
him. We just lost
Nessie, the silicon
Nessie,
body.
exactly.
That's funny.
So a lot of people associate innovation with unicorns. So very quickly, starting with you, Jase, can you name a unicorn outside Silicon Valley?
Yeah, a lot of them.
Okay.
From Kansas City, where Neighborly was born in 2012 as a direct result of Google Fiber and the efforts to wire one half of town with gigabit internet infrastructure and leave the other half behind. We come from a town with a long history of unicorns.
So what's the unicorn?
One would be H&R Block.
Okay.
CPAs, you know, a good
Yeah,
tax
an oldie but
company.
goodie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tim?
Yeah, H.R. That became a unicorn over like 150 years or
Hey.
something.
A
Low and
unicorn
slow is how we
unicorn.
cook barbecue too in Kansas City. So, yeah.
I like that.
Um,
So, yeah, outside Silicon Valley, yeah, we backed Baidu and Focus Media and Yipei in China. That's
Okay.
3.
Uh-huh.
And then Skype was outside, and we backed them. And then there have been, I don't know, there have been a lot. There have been from all.
Right. It's hard
Wait a
to
second,
think
there are a
of-
whole bunch. You mean unicorns we backed or
just
unicorns,
in general,
period?
like sometimes
Oh,
people have a tough time.
Microsoft and Dell Computer and
Okay, I should
they're-
have said
they're
from
all
outside
over the
coast.
place.
It's actually, a lot of people have a tough time coming up with them. Can you think of any?
Yeah, I'll go back to my own
Uh-huh.
backyard, and you know, there was Qualtrics, which was
Qualtrics,
a
yeah.
unicorn that was scheduled to price their IPO on Thursday, and SAP bought them that Sunday before for $8.5 billion. So that was probably the most recent big transaction in Utah. Pluralsight is another one. Inside Sales, Vivint,
Right.
a bunch in my backyard in Utah.
Right.
Oh, wait, yeah, I backed a couple of those. Oh,
did?
Ancestry.
Ancestry was
That's
one,
one
is
of
one.
ours.
They're private right
Right.
now. We'll see them in the public market.
Yeah.
Well, they were
I hope.
public.
Yeah, they
That was
went
my
private.
family went public, went private. Yeah. Anyway, they're a
Yeah.
unicorn. They're way over.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy.
No, everyone loves talking about innovation outside Silicon Valley, but then when you ask people, what are the biggest companies? It's actually, people stop and think about it for a few minutes. There's Cabbage in Atlanta. There's another company, Duo Security in Ann Arbor, but there aren't actually as many as people like to think there are. And every year when the National Venture Capital Association tracks financing going to venture-backed startups, even though the total pool gets bigger each year, the percentage going to Silicon Valley stays about the same. So there's so much talk about like, oh, finally other parts of the country are having their moment, but in percentage terms, it's actually the same year after year for Silicon Valley. So I wonder if you think that'll continue to be the case going forward, or if as things change.
No,
you
I think it's
it'll-
opening up.
Okay, to a larger
And part of it is California politics. They're
Uh-huh.
pushing everybody out.
What's the worst thing that's happening to do that? Like what specifically?
Oh, I think very high regulations, the worst taxes anywhere,
But
and
that's
the
been the case for years.
no.
It's
The last 50 years, yes, we've gone from #1 as a place to do business to number 50. We've gone from #1 in education to 47.
well, that's because of
We've
lower
gone from
taxes.
#1. What are you talking about?
The property taxes that used to fund the education system are now. you
Is
know,
that our topic? Anyway, you really want to get into education
okay.
with me?
That's bonkers.
We should be using school
I-
vouchers.
let's
That's all
do
there
that
is to it.
panel next, but for now, let's stick to innovation across America. So you think it's because of government
Well,
policies here in
people are
California?
moving out. They're, you know, Tesla moved their factory to Nevada, and it was almost a joke that Amazon looked. It was like a 24-hour blink deciding not to go into California. And the regulations are pushing the middle class out because you can start a business here, but then they want to. Then when a company gets to be more than 150 employees, California regulates the heck out of them, so they move to Texas or Tennessee or wherever.
The opposite. I mean,
And then those people, we don't get those jobs. We don't get the big long tail of jobs. And so that's why you're tripping over the homeless in San Francisco, because we're not getting those jobs.
Except there are a lot of companies that pick up and move to California every year. Jase's company being an example.
There's
Actually,
a
I
huge
think
exodus.
Jase is right here
Huge
and will
exodus.
tell you that there might be an exodus,
There might be
but
one
there's
or
also
two.
an influx.
You want to head
Sure
out
there
and get
are
a
one or
coffee
two.
and these two can battle on stage?
So I was here in California in Silicon Valley for 4 years, and it was interesting. Not once during those 4 years did I ever hear state government talk about business. It was all about entitlements and that sort of thing. And so I saw just droves of companies, more mature companies, leaving California. And it wasn't just to even Texas; it was to Plano, Texas. I mean, they're all in Plano. However, but the innovation, and I think, I ask why. Why don't we hear the state government talking about business? And I think they've taken for granted that there will constantly be a Silicon Valley, and the innovation will happen here. And then the question is, how long can California retain that before they...
That's actually as long as we get the immigrants to keep coming to the Silicon Valley, because our education system being 47th, we're not going to end up getting a lot of innovation from
Tim, are immigrants
internal.
the topic of this panel?
What's that? What is the topic?
The topic is innovation.
Okay, let's
across-
keep going on the topic.
So I was just actually curious because you said that about Plano, Texas, but I know that when it comes to innovation, there are more companies in California starting, any place else every year. So you hear a lot about companies moving their back offices to places like Texas, but the headquarters and a lot of the true cutting edge stuff still seems to happen here.
They start here. It's
Right.
a great place to start a business. We got all the venture capital. Fantastic place to start a business.
Right.
When you get a big business, when one of them becomes big, it becomes very difficult to stay. And so you have to put your, manufacturing somewhere else.
But is that innovation? Does that matter if the back office and
Well,
the
it matters
manufacturing-
because we're getting the super wealthy who start those businesses and the super poor who would have worked for those businesses had they been able to stay. Yes, it's hugely important. It is unbelievably important.
to lose the
The
when
heavy
companies
regulations of California, the high taxes of California are pushing out the middle class.
Say, what about? Or you were going to say something, Rob?
Well, I mean, I'll give you some. I want to make sure that Jase has an opportunity to talk, but about his observation, because he's got something that I think is a pull outside of California. I was just going to say, I moved to Utah 22 years ago when there was one venture fund there that was $150 million. And the big issue was nobody could get funded. They said, the VCs won't leave Silicon Valley to come out to look at the companies, when they can get as many as they want in Silicon Valley. So that was the issue, was money. Over a period of time, that changed through a lot of partner investing and so forth, to where then money became sufficient. And companies started engaging. Google, Goldman Sachs moved a big shop there, a lot of technology companies. And then once management was there, computer scientists could go there and say, well, I can be confident that if something happens to Ancestry, I can walk across the street and get another job. Because the big fear was, if they go to a startup there and it fails, they got to move back to Silicon Valley. So once there was enough critical mass that they knew that they could have a career outside of Silicon Valley, then there started to get some traction. Now there's plenty of money there. There's plenty of venture capital. There are three great universities that are contributing computer scientists. And now the issue is, just like Silicon Valley, they can't find enough talented computer engineers.
It's great. When I first went to Utah and we set up the Wasatch Fund, I remember looking at two identical companies. They were just almost exactly the same. And the one in Silicon Valley, this was back in the boom time. Now we got another boom time. But the guy would come in and he goes, I got term sheets from two other venture firms. Can you beat it? And I'd say, well, what do you do? And then I found out, and I said, well, that's the same thing. And these term sheets were at a $40 million valuation. And then I went back to Utah, and I saw the exact same company, and it was at a $4 million valuation. And I thought, there is an arbitrage here. And over time, there is an arbitrage. And long term, no question that the word has spread. There are venture capitalists now kind of backing companies. I think in all 50 states, there are probably venture capitalists starting. And it takes a long time to create a Silicon Valley. That was 60 years in the making. And now, it is sort of great because the whole culture is, hey, there's a table. I can make a better table. There's a couch. I can make a better couch. I can get funding for a better purse, better bag, better, better people, whatever. I don't know.
Speaking of valuations, Jase, did that factor into your decision to move? I know you still have an office in Kansas City, but to come out to San Francisco?
Oh, it's partly that. It's, access to really strong talent and capital, and met a lot of really cool people along the way. We came by to pitch you in 2014.
Oh
we
my
won,
gosh, we blew it, huh?
The Global Entrepreneur Summit, and of which you were a judge. And we get to meet folks like Tim Draper. I mean, what else can you say? You got to come to California for these types of experiences, right?
And I'd like to point out that you now have A-list backers, including 8 and Emerson Collect.
We're a venture-backed technology company that connects communities with capital using technology and hordes of data that we gather from lots of really interesting sources. And, the market that we started with is the $1 billion per day boring and unsexy municipal bond market. And so we're a venture-backed technology company from Ashton Kutcher was one of our first investors at Sound Ventures. I don't know if anybody from Sound is in the room. They co-led our seed with 8VC. And then Emerson Collective co-led our A with 8VC. They do some really amazing work. But we focus on helping those communities develop the types of critical infrastructure they need in order to maybe not be the next Silicon Valley, because that's probably not possible, but be the best that they can be. Has anybody here read the book Fiber that just came out about the next technological revolution and why America might miss it? And all the fun around 5G and all of these fiber-dependent technologies that are taking off like rockets in places like Sweden and South Korea, where they invested in deep fiber to the facility, the premise. And in the United States, we sit on lots and lots of copper and 4G fixed wireless that are the equivalent of trying to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool with a kinked garden hose. And so I think the reason that we were asked to come to talk on this one was to talk about the Neighborly Infrastructure Opportunity Fund. Can I get a quick show of hands? Does anybody in the room pay capital gains? Sweet. Okay. I have a handwritten note from compliance.
Wait,
we're
there's
running out of time.
some way of getting around paying capital gains?
It turns out.
Look, I think everyone here, at least half of this room pays capital gains, and there were 2 hands.
Well, they sheepishly were, elbow high. I think everybody.
There were
100%.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You got a little.
Do you pay cap gains?
Absolutely.
You said Bitcoin 10,000 back in 2015.
Well, I didn't. I don't have to pay until I sell it.
Oh, you're not selling. You hodl.
No, you bet I'm hodling.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow. But for the rest of you that hodled and have cap gains, the opportunity zone legislation is a really powerful mechanism that's helping to attract capital and to make it more effective to generate returns in places that are non-traditional, like the rest of the country. So ours is specifically focused on infrastructure, information infrastructure, deep fiber optic broadband infrastructure that helps form.
So if we back your things, we don't pay capital gains taxes on it?
I have a handwritten note from compliance about what I can and can't say. I'm happy to introduce you to the fine folks at Neighborly Investments who run the Neighborly Infrastructure
Who's your
Opportunity
accounting
Fund.
team? There's an accounting team over here.
It should be EY. And
It should be,
talk.
yeah.
So to switch gears for a second, I'm curious, do you think the trajectory of Theranos would have been different had it not been in Silicon Valley? Would that company have been possible outside Silicon Valley?
Would the trajectory of Theranos be different? I think it might have had the same trajectory because but they would have had to have still been able to reach those super large investors to get as big and high as they were.
Would that have been possible if they'd been based, say, in Chicago?
You know,
or
if
Des Moines?
they didn't take on that money, she wouldn't have been on the cover of Forbes, and they would have been able to kind of grow their business a little bit more organically, and maybe the outcome would have been very different. That is possible, because when you get the cover of Forbes, I mean, that's they're looking for a way to take you down when you're up there, right? So it's like, and if you can, I mean, anybody's shop, you send the press after them and the federal government and the lawyers and the whole thing, something's going to go awry.
No,
bolts are going to fall off, and you're going to say,
covers of magazines.
What's that?
Like, there have been a lot of founders who've been on the covers of Forbes and seemingly done okay. Like, the people who started Microsoft, for example, or Marc Andreessen. Or would you back her again, knowing everything we know today?
I'd back her as chief science officer. I would not back her as CEO.
Okay.
It's a good question, though, because a CEO. I mean, now she probably knows, but if the press hits you like that, you have to defend yourself. And she kept saying, the data will play it out, and my lawyers have told me not to talk. It's that kind of thing.
Well,
so that's a mess. That creates a mess. You don't want, are there lawyers out there? Probably. You don't want your lawyers to run your business.
Well, also, she put herself under so much pressure. It seems that she said she was running the blood tests one way and was actually doing it another way. So you have to defend yourself, but also you kind of have to do what you're saying. Are you still in touch with her?
Oh,
this
absolutely.
panel is crazy.
I know.
There's audience questions.
Who knew what was going to be happening here?
This panel is bonkers. Are you filming this so we can get a copy of this afterwards and relive the memories? This is good. I want to be your wingman on these things. This is bonkers.
I want to take this one on the road.
Do
with
it.
me.
Okay, in a minute, I'm going to open it up to the audience for a couple of questions if anybody has any, but okay, yeah.
What are you talking about?
What?
She's a complete fraudster. She's going to prison. The whole thing was a scam.
If you believe what the press does.
I believe that the basic premise of what she was in the hospital based technology, and then she scanned a bunch of people, and she's going to be in handcuffs. So hopefully they'll have a venture capital fund takeout, and she can make a comeback. But that was a disaster of due diligence.
Yeah. I mean, you've clearly read the book.
So you actually disagree with, I mean, I know that you've said that your test was great with Theranos, but do you think the test was actually run on the equipment she said it was run on? Because it.
Oh, no, she told me these two tests are run on this machine. These other tests we're going to run back here. She was completely straight with me.
So you believe that she actually ran your test on the machines she told you?
She did. I saw it happen.
It just seems like there was a lot of fraud, and people told that their tests were run on certain machines that they actually weren't run on.
If you ever run a startup, you got to pull a lot of things together.
So you think
you got to make a lot of interesting things happen, and a lot of it is like, I believe that this will be the future, and you point people toward that future. By the way, literally 15 startups have come through my office with the same plan.
I think one day we'll have that, the ability to run a lot of tests on a very small amount of blood, but you're saying that it's okay to exaggerate a little bit for the end goal, essentially?
No, I don't think that that's right. But I think entrepreneurs have a vision, and they have a point where they want to take people. And they do that. They move people to that point. And then, if an entrepreneur doesn't quite get there, they're subject to all the criticism.
So you're saying when she showed the results of that test, she was kind of showing her bigger goal, but not the actual result of that specific?
Crazy.
Can we get a new moderator?
Oh, wait, you're firing me?
Jamie.
You didn't?
Jamie, who is this?
Wait a minute.
Crazy.
Okay. I also just want to know for a second about the what you all think about.
How about global venture capital, or what's happening in the world?
I was actually going to ask about
we
the
have all
rise
sorts
in
of interesting things going on in the world. We got Bitcoin,
agree.
all the associated
We're not
technologies
talking
with
about
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
We got
We're-
AI and all those technologies and all the industries that those things are going
I'd
to
actually
transform.
like to ask about the rise.
Theranos.
No.
Again,
No.
let's just keep it
actually,
going.
It sounds like that's what you want to talk about, but I was going to ask about the rise in degrees in computer science and engineering and how those are outpacing the rises in degrees overall, like substantially, especially in engineering. And I was wondering if that'll affect the types of startups we see around the country, since that's happening all over the country. And
Why don't you guys answer that?
All right, so at the risk of way overplugging Utah, I'm not here on assignment from the governor. The one thing that came out of the big Silicon Slopes conference that happened 2 months ago is that there was a commitment that Utah will be the first state to teach computer science in every public school in the state. They want to be the first to do that. And each one of the board members of the Silicon Slopes committed $5 million, or $1 million each on stage to help initiate that and get it launched, so that we're teaching STEM in public schools, teaching those important STEM, and computer science in public schools.
Nice.
So will that create a different type of startup, or like will the emphasis on that mean more technical startups are founded, or how do you see that?
I think that allows more people to participate in a digital economy. I think that's what, I look at how my kids, what they were taught. They're not particularly well prepared to participate in that from a career standpoint coming out of a public school. So yeah, I think it does. I think it's helpful.
Right.
Yeah.
Any more audience questions? Yes.
I have one, Tim, when you invest, do you look at the personality, the individual, or the financials, or a bit of both? Like, what do you look
Well, since it's an early stage startup, there aren't any financials. So the first thing I'm looking for is will this matter? Is it going to be important? Is the world going to be better for this? And then the second thing is it big enough to matter? I mean, if this works, how great will it be? And that's more important to me than all the risks and all the whatever. And then when I finally meet the entrepreneur, it's all about, I poke and test and figure it out. But what I'm really looking for is this entrepreneur in it for the right reasons?
Oh.
Have they got this as a mission in their life? Is this something that they can, that they are really going to dedicate themselves to this for the rest of their lives? And is it like just in their heart? It's a lot of heart that I'm looking for. Heart, and then do they know it? Have they done their homework? Have they done their research? And also, if there are 2 or 3 of the entrepreneurs that come into the room at the same time, what's the dynamic? Do they have faith in each other's success, or do they talk over each other? Is there some weird dynamic where they both want to be the CEO or something? Or they're dating. That can be trouble. Because, boy, there's a lot of pressure on somebody who's trying to do something extraordinary with their life. And if they think that somehow this love interest is going to help that along, it doesn't. Now, if they're married, it's different. That works, or can work.
Yes.
Outside of Neighborly, what do you think your biggest miss has been?
Yeah.
And not
Thank
because
you.
of money.
It's definitely Neighborly now. I mean,
What they
this
could
is.
have done with it, or at least you looked at that startup and you said, wow, they did really incredible things, and I wish I'd been part of that.
Okay, I'm going to take responsibility for the ones I am totally responsible for blowing, okay? There are 2. Because, I mean, I brought in Google, pounded the table, and got fought off. Okay, but the 2 were, one was Reed Hastings comes into my office and he says, we're gonna send CDs to people in the mail. And I said, have you ever streamed a movie? What are you thinking? And okay, and then what he was thinking and what he said to me was, they're not ready for this yet, for streaming. And I thought,
Whoa.
well, why don't you just wait until they are, or build it now, and then they'll be ready. Anyway, so I totally blew it with him. And then Reid Hoffman came into my office. The two Reids. God, what is it with that? Next Reid that comes into my office, we're funding him, whatever.
I'm Reid.
Look, get over here, read it.
Reid Hoffman comes in, and I'm the network guy. I created viral marketing, and this is a network thing. And I'm thinking, this is great, except I don't, what I was thinking is, I don't want all those salesmen calling me. So I didn't think it would succeed because certain people don't want to be called by other people. Right. Instead of like, yeah, a lot of people will want those calls, and the network effect. God, what an idiot I was with that one. With Reed Hastings, I at least have there's a little, honor in knowing there was better technology coming. But boy, with Reid Hoffman, I'm an idiot.
Are you a customer of both?
Did I see one
Oh
more
yeah,
question back there?
absolutely. Oh, LinkedIn is so cool, and
LinkedIn,
and
Netflix.
Netflix. Oh God, I'm a customer of both. I just love them both.
I wanted to thank the three of
Oh,
you.
by the way, those guys are so. Reed Hastings is so smart. Oh boy.
Thank you all
Thanks,
so much
Tim.
for coming on the
And
panel.
by the way, Elizabeth Holmes is smart too.
Yeah, she is.
Oh,
She's
geez.
brilliant.
Yep. All right, thank you to the
Thank
panelists.
you.
Great.